David Brewster here with a new episode of 3 for All. This is 3 Eddie Van Halen licks from 1996, and I've had a lot of requests to feature more of Eddie's music, and if you search around on my channel, you'll find more Van Halen related episodes than anybody. There's multiple episodes of chord play, 3 for All, breaking chords, scales and tails, rant videos. There's a lot of Van Halen floating around here on my channel, and a big reason for that is I wouldn't be sitting here with a guitar in my lap if it wasn't for Edward Van Halen. He was my original influence and inspiration. And I've carried that with me the entire time, being a guitarist and musician. I've gone to music school and studied jazz and classical and acoustic, but still, Eddie's kind of like the center of my musical universe. I guess his music and ideas are just part of my musical DNA. And in my mind, there's only one king, and that's King Edward. So the licks in this episode actually came from a candid home video that was filmed in Jason Becker's living room in 1996. And this footage has actually been circulating for a few years, and I noticed it, about 3 or 4 years ago, but then it's been circling again online. And when I saw it again, I thought, you know what? Let's hit that, because, as much as I like, looking at rehearsed, performance and concert footage, where it's rehearsed and kind of practiced and played a certain way, there's nothing better than these kind of off-the-cuff, candid, behind-the-scenes, maybe it's backstage or in a hotel room or a studio or just at home, and it's a player being themselves. And definitely this footage is Eddie being Eddie. He's just jamming. It's very spontaneous and very off-the-cuff, and I like that, where you kind of feel like a fly on the wall and you're just watching him kind of do his thing. And he's jamming around. He actually plays, Jason's numbers guitar. And then he's playing the Wolfgang that he actually presents to Jason Becker. So this guitar was a gift from Van Halen to Jason Becker back in '96. And then Jason actually just recently sold that guitar at auction just a few days ago, which is to help offset, his medical expenses. But this black, Peavey Wolfgang that Eddie gave Jason actually just was sold at auction. Like I said, I think it was December 14th. Alright, the first lick is a signature tapped Eddie Van Halen phrase, and you can definitely find this in Spanish Fly, from Van Halen 2, and then he definitely played this live in concert a lot, and I've seen other guitarists that are influenced by, Eddie kind of borrowed this lick. It's definitely a signature and very famous tapping lick, like this. One more time. So we're basically playing with the A blues scale. Think A minor pentatonic with a flat 5, E flat. And if we played that lick without tapping, you could actually pick it like this. You could hybrid pick it. Something like that. But with tapping, you're basically tapping this G note, releasing the D, and then you're going to pull off to that C to the open G. So that's on the G string. Like that. And then do the exact same thing on the D string. Tap D, release to A, and then pull off the G to the open D. So you're doing the exact same thing on the G and the D string right there. And then the last part here, this all takes place on the A string. You're going to tap A, release to E, tap A, release to E flat, which is your flat 5. Tap that A, release to D, and then scooch back to the C, bend that to C sharp, release the bend, and then end on that tapped A note right there like this. And the trick there is make sure you release that bend. I think we encountered this, in a recent 3 for All episode. I think it was the Bruce Kulick episode. But you don't want to have that note bent when you tap that A note, because then it's not going to sound like A, it's going to sound like A sharp. So the important thing there is release that bend. And to me that just sounds like Van Halen big time. Next up's a falling down the stairs legato run, or at least that's what I'm calling it, and it's the symmetrical kind of E mixolydian based idea, and Eddie's actually playing this on Jason's numbers guitar, which is really interesting, but it's something like this. One more time. So it's this really interesting kind of sporadic lick. Definitely Eddie excelled at playing licks like that. So it's symmetrical, and he's basically sliding into this E, and then you're gonna do, you know, a couple hammer-ons right there. You know, that E, F sharp, the G sharp, and then release back to that E note like that. So that's the first string on the B string right there. And then do a similar move on the G. And then do a similar move on the D. So you're always going back to that index finger. And you're doing this kind of rolling kind of hop, you know, from string to string. And then on the A string right there, start on this E, F sharp, and end on D. So really slow. Down the stairs kind of feel, which Eddie excelled at playing ideas like that, where it really had this spontaneous, exciting kind of sound. It really does kind of feel like you're falling down the stairs there. Right, the next idea is really interesting. So he's basically playing with major triads, but he's moving up using like a flat 5 interval. So it kind of has like a diminished overtone even though it's major triads, like this. One more time. So once again, this falling down the stairs kind of feel. It's really cool. So it starts with A major right here. And then you're going to do E flat major right there. And then it's A major again. So you're kind of cycling between, you know, A and E flat. And then right there, so he kind of dips out of it right there by the time he gets to the G and the B string. And then right there, do that pull off D, C to the B, and then you're going to basically do a bar dip into that E note. And then you're going to basically do a pull off there, that E, D to C, you know, twice in a row. And then you're going to go to the B string and do the same thing, B, A to G. And you're going to do that pull off the first time, and then it's B to G, and then end on that A, like that. It's a cool like ending right there. So really slow. I just totally screwed that up. Like that. And it's a tricky lick, especially around the G and the B string. That's a good place to kind of screw that up. And of course it has that seamless kind of flow to it that only Eddie can do. Such a cool lick, and definitely kind of, you know, not a standard phrase from Eddie. So I don't know if he was playing this because Jason was sitting there, or maybe he was working on, you know, some ideas like that at the time. But that's a cool phrase. One more time. Okay, here's a bonus lick from this footage, and it's not really a lick. It's more like a melodic riff, but it's so busy and moves around so much it almost feels like a lick. And honestly, I was stumped because it sounds familiar, but I don't think Eddie actually used this anywhere, you know, as a Van Halen song or on an album. But it definitely rings a bell, like this. There's a lot going on right here, and he's basically kind of moving between an implied D to A to E progression right here, and he's using this kind of crafty slide like that. So you're doing this kind of droned open D string, and then you're moving this E to F sharp, and then that E back to D. And then do a similar thing on the A string, but you're going to bend right there on that C sharp. And then right there it's going to move to E. Right there, and you're basically grabbing that G sharp with the low E open. And he does that little melodic phrase right there, you know, that that G sharp A to B, back to that G sharp, and then that E to D. So right there, it's real crafty. The way he kind of produces that melody with those kind of implied chords and droned open string. That's the first time. And the second time, he kind of ends on that G sharp, and then he slides octaves, this E to G sharp to B. And that's tricky, because you're going from E to G sharp to B to G sharp back to E, and you have to really know exactly where you're going right there. That's hard. Do the first pass again. And the last time, go down to that A, and then you're going to basically grab the C sharp sus4 right there. Up with right there. It kind of turns into C sharp minor, because it's that C sharp sus4, go back to that G sharp, and then it's the high E and B open with the fretted part of that chord. And I don't know what that is, but it's really cool. That's going to wrap this episode of 3 for All with 3 Eddie Van Halen licks from 1996. Definitely sorely missed, not only on the music scene, but also just in our world. You know, I think definitely the impact after Eddie passed away, not to mention other legends like Neil Peart and Jeff Beck and people like that. It's really hard, because you don't really know how you're supposed to feel after somebody like that leaves. And for me, Eddie was always there, kind of like a guiding light, kind of showing me the way. And no matter what I was practicing or playing, what kind of band I was playing in, or if I dove heavy into metal or jazz or acoustic or classical or something, I could always look over and kind of remember where I came from and that initial spark that started the whole thing for me. And that was Eddie Van Halen for sure. And I'll always carry that with me. You know, it's always going to be a part of my musical DNA or who I am. And no matter what I'm doing, I could be playing like some kind of polka or like a Dixieland jazz or something, and a little part of Eddie seems to pop out, you know, even when I don't mean to. It's like, whoops, I just did a bar dive there, or I started tapping, or I tapped that bend. I just can't help it. You know, it just kind of became part of who I am as a musician. And even though I tried to wash some of that away, you know, when I was younger, then I realized, like, no, I need to keep that stuff in my bag of tricks, because I don't want to lose, you know, those important licks and that initial, you know, inspiration that I had when I was a kid. So like I said, I'll always carry Van Halen's influence with me. It's part of who I am. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Nailed Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.